this video, I'm gonna go over the fox and the chicken type of position and the deep freeze. The first position I'm going to talk about is the fox and the chicken, and I borrowed this idea from Jeremy Silman, who is an international master and an excellent coach. I recommend all his books. He's a really great teacher. What a fox does, it comes and wants to steal some chickens. So first it will come near where the dogs can smell the fox so that it will distract the dogs. So then the dogs will come and chase the fox, and what the fox will do is gonna run away. It's gonna distract the dogs will run after the fox, and then now nobody's guarding the chickens anymore, so the fox will come in after the chickens, the dog will come behind, and the fox will go get the chickens. Now the dog's running behind, no one's guarding them, and now the fox has the chickens already, and then it's gonna run loose, and the dogs are too late because the chickens are gone. So this is the same idea that's gonna be used on the chessboard. So in this position, you can see we have an extra pawn, and this is the pawn that we're gonna use to distract black. So first we're gonna push him back, king to b7, king b4. He's going to block us off, move to the side, black moves back, and now this is the crucial moment. Right now we can let this pawn go and go get the chickens. Since black is distracted by this pawn, he has to stop this pawn first before he can come and defend his pawn on the other side, which is like the chicken. He is not going to be able to go on the other side since this pawn can become a queen in 3 moves. So we're going to go ahead and run away. Here it will take black 2 moves to take this pawn, so he's going to come after the pawn. He takes the pawn, we go away, and he's chasing us down to try to stop us from queening. However, after we come with the king to g7, we protect these 3 squares. We have like a shield against black, and there's nothing he can do to stop us from queening our pawn. Now if we go back to the beginning, I do want to point out one thing to be careful of. Make sure that you let black take the pawn in 2 tempi. If you allow black to take the pawn in 1 move, then he's actually going to be able to draw this game. In other words, let's still push the pawn. Black moves back, king to b4. Let's say he blocks us off, move on the side, king moves back. Here, if you push the king to c5, black will probably take the opposition, blocking off. Here's the time also you could let go of the pawn. From this position as well, it will take him 2 moves to take the pawn. It's going to be 1 and then 2 moves to take the pawn. However, if you push the pawn and let's say he blocks it off, and now you leave that pawn and you run after the other pawn, you will see that here this game will end up in a draw. Let's say move king to d6, then he chases us on the board. And what's going to happen, he's going to come to f6 and take the opposition, and we can't get out. Let's say we move up, he's going to take the opposition again, making a shield and keeping white inside. And now all we got is push the pawn, and it's going to end up in stalemate. If you do try to get out, for example, after you push the pawn and he moves up, let's say you come out, we've talked about that he's just going to come in the corner and there's nothing that you can do, and this is also stalemate. The next position I'm going to go over, it's called the deep freeze position. Here, if it's white to move, the game is won. The reason why white is able to win is because he's going to be able to use the pawn on the g file to block or to stop both of black's pawn on the right hand side. So what's going to happen is white is going to push the pawn to g5. If black will challenge the pawn, let's say with h6, well, here we simply take the pawn, and then we're going to be able to get a queen and stop the other pawn. Also, I want to point out that after you push the pawn, black might move to h5, thinking that he stopped the pawn. However, we do know the rule of en passant. We're actually able to take that pawn via en passant and still queen and be able to grab his pawn. So this pawn move right here to g5 blocks both of black's pawn on the right side. Now if black notices that you're going to queen before him and he retreats, what you got now is the fox and the chicken type of position. We can move back, black will take the opposition to block us off, and now we could let go of the pawn. It will take black 2 tempi to win the pawn. In the meantime, we're going to go and grab the chickens. So the game will continue king to d5, he goes after the pawn, and we go after the chickens. And even though he's running and chasing us down, he's not going to be able to stop us from taking the pawns. And after we grab the square h7, we are going to be able to simply promote the pawn and win the game. I do want to mention that this deep freeze position works just because we are able to stop black's pawn by going in his side of the board. Doing this, we are going to be able to queen faster than him if he moves to h5 and we take the pawn. From here, it only takes us 2 squares to queen the pawn, and after black moves, it's going to take him 4 squares to get a queen. So in other words, he's not going to make it. However, if I do move this position back 1 rank, this position is actually drawn. So let's take a look. So if you look at this position, it's the exact same position. However, we move the pawns on the right side 1 rank down. We are going to try the same idea with g4, trying to block both of black's pawn. However, just because our pawn is in our side of the board, we are going to queen at the same time, and this position will end up in a draw. So here, if he pushes like h5, after we take the pawn and he moves, it's going to take us 3 moves to get a queen. Same thing for black. It's going to take 1, 2, 3 moves for him to get a queen. And even though we have an extra pawn, this endgame is actually drawn. If it's black to move in this position, black is actually winning. The reason why, he can push the pawn to h5 and create a pass pawn, and after we take, white will not be able to catch the pawn in time before it queens, and now black is the one winning. As a rule, if I go back, I want to point out that whenever you have 2 pawns against 1, you want to make sure that you always try to push the pawn that it's on the open file, because like that you will always be able to create a pass pawn. Otherwise, if you push the other pawn ahead, you might end up in the deep freeze position where 1 pawn could block both of your pawns. So always try to push the pawn on the open file ahead of the other pawn. Knowing these pawn endgames very well, it's very important, because there are many positions where you have a winning pawn endgame and you do have the opportunity to convert to that pawn endgame. This is a very important rule, to always simplify the position that you have into something that you know. It will save you a lot of pain, especially when you're in time trouble. So right here, if you look at this position, you can see that the white pawn on the b file blocks both of black's pawns on the left side, and our pawn is in black's side of the board in the 5th rank. In other words, he will queen first if he's going to try to challenge the pawn, and the other pawn will never make it to a queen. So this game is won already if we are able to convert this position. So what you want to do here is queen takes the rook on f5. Even though it looks like, oh my god, why are we giving the queen away? The queen is the strongest piece. This actually simplifies the position and it makes it a lot easier to win. And you will see in a second that it is the best move to do it over here. So here, pawn takes the queen, and now we're gonna go and run after the pawns. Right here, black has nothing to do. If he pushes the king down, we just simply take the pawns and win the game. We took control of the a file, and now he can't stop us from queening. Or if he's trying to push the pawn to c5, we could take en passant, and then we queen first, and we queen with check, and he's never going to be able to queen his pawn. If you liked my video, please subscribe, and don't forget to check out my new website, masteryourchess.com, where you can learn, practice, test, and master your chess knowledge.